Hi, everybody. I'm Tamara and John.
And I'm John Davis.
Welcome to Spirit Cafe.
Come in, sit down, and
grab a cup of love.
A Spirituality Without the Guilt podcast. Hey guys, John Davis, and I am really excited today. We have a special guest today who is an expert on happiness. And I think it's really fabulous we get to talk to somebody about what is happiness, because happiness and spirituality, in my opinion, go hand to hand. So I thought we'd bring on a guest today who is the happiness coach. She's phenomenal. I think you'll love her. She also happens to be my co-host in crime, Miss Tamara Zoner. Hello, Tamara Zoner. How are you today?
Hello, John. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing just fine. Just fine. Drinking my iced tea. Hold on.
So I am both host and guest today. This is exciting.
You are both host and guest. You are the expert on happiness. I mean, that is what you do.
It is what I do.
So why don't you lead us out? Tell us a little bit about yourself, young lady, and how you became a happiness coach.
Well, I love that question because I became a happiness coach by way of trying to find my own. I had always been a happy kid, with a positive disposition. And I got to a point in my life where I didn't feel happy, and that was unusual for me. And I started trying to figure out why and how to get back there. And, it was a slow uncovering of things that I'd brought into my life or tolerated that I'd kind of layered on that just needed to be removed. And then other things that needed to be practiced so that I could maintain this level of happiness. And when I talk about happiness, happiness doesn't mean always feeling happy and up, but it's easy to return to that state of peace and well-being and contentment. And then it's easy to move through all the other emotions.
Right. I love the whole time you're talking, I kept thinking of the word contentment, because I think that's kind of the element. And I think that there's always going to be the periods in our life where we are not feeling our greatest, or we're getting our funk, right? And and for the past few weeks, I've been kind of going through a funk mode myself, and it's been kind of a weird thing for me, because I'm typically a smiley, happy guy all the time. But I think moments in life come along where you feel great change is starting to happen. And when those things start to happen, things get really kind of weird sometimes, and you might not seem as happy as you possibly could have been or would have been. So as far as happiness, and I know that a lot of your work strives into finding their passion or their purpose. So how does that tie into how does happiness tie into passion and purpose?
Well, research has shown that people who find meaning in their everyday lives and their everyday experiences have greater happiness in their lives. And so the way I kind of work is we outline what you want your life to look and feel like, what you want to be doing, what kind of environment you want to be in, what kind of relationships you want to have. And then through practice, because it's always a practice, I teach you how to align your life with those things so that each day becomes more meaningful and more joyful and more fulfilling. And so that's how they tie in, because it's so important for us to be, doing something that means something to us. It's not about like finding your purpose in life, because purpose changes throughout your life, especially as you go through different ages and stages. But it is about finding purpose in every day and meaning. So if my mission, and this one took me a little while to get, if my mission is to bring greater joy and happiness to others, and I think that I have to do that through this avenue, right? Speaking or coaching, but I'm a garbage woman, then I'm going to feel out of alignment and unhappy because I'm not fulfilling my mission. But I can bring joy and happiness as a garbage person, as a barista, as a clerk at Target. I can bring joy and happiness no matter where I am or what I'm doing. And once that clicked for me, I didn't have so much pressure on myself to get where I wanted to be, because I could be living my own personally defined purpose wherever and whenever I was.
Right. I always go back to the idea of present moment choice. Happiness is a present moment choice,
Mhm.
and it's our creative moment. I know on a different podcast I've mentioned the actual translation of the word dukkha, and how it's the Buddhist quote, it's not life is suffering, life is suffering because of our habitual responses to our subconscious belief.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of people get really stuck in their past experience, and they have a hard time getting the present moment happiness because of being in the habitual responses of their own
Mhm.
subconscious belief. And you have to break the cycle of that by choosing something different. So
Yeah.
how hard is it to get someone to choose something different, or how is it harder for an individual to choose something different?
Well, yeah, because I can't get anybody to
Right.
choose something different, right? That is their responsibility. And it depends on how uncomfortable they are, right? It depends on how sick of their own misery they are. I think we all, we know, and we've talked about a little bit on this podcast, how our subconscious mind works to keep us safe, and safe and happy to the subconscious is the status quo, whether that's something consciously we love or hate. It just wants things to stay the same. And so we have to choose to practice new behaviors. There's a quote in the book Happy for No Reason that is, the only difference between happy people and unhappy people is their habits. And
Mm.
so it's about bringing awareness to what we're doing that is keeping us feeling like crap or unhappy, or just even so, because frankly, a so life is not good enough for me.
Right,
About
right.
you, but like just getting by and getting through and surviving, that's not what life is about to me.
Right,
So if that's
right.
what you're doing, like, do some soul searching, listeners, because that's not what it's meant to be. We're meant to be lit up. We're meant to have joy. We're meant to have huge belly laughs frequently. We're meant to really love life. And so it's just a matter of recognizing where you're at and starting from there, and then engaging in the practices and habits that science has proven to benefit and raise our happiness. And some of that is, getting mindful and getting aware, but a lot of it is repatterning our neural pathways,
Mm.
because we are built toward the negative. It is how our brains work. It's how we've evolved. And we have to practice leaning into the positive. It takes just a fraction of a second for our brains to register a negative, but it takes almost, or at least 20 seconds for our brains to register a positive. So
Mm.
we have to really lean into those positives and notice them and savor them, and wait until we can feel kind of the chemical shift in our bodies as our brain releases some hormones saying, yes, you're paying attention to something meaningful or worthwhile or beautiful.
So out of that, I have a question. So
Mhm.
do you believe that um, the negative c- comes faster because of the fact that we are predisposed to be negative, number one?
Mhm.
And because I know negative people who always see negative things, but I know positive people who always see positive things.
Right.
And so I think that positive people are predisposed to see positive things. And so maybe their perception of a positive experience comes faster to them than a negative person, because they're predisposed to that it's their inclination to lean that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's a mix, because yes, evolutionarily, we are predisposed toward the negative for our safety and survival.
yes.
Now we don't need, we don't need to be so hyper aware of every little thing. And so uh, we can lean into the positive more and switch that over. But there are those of us who, I mean, we talk about something in the happiness that I teach called the happiness set point. And we all come in with this set point. So the 50% of our happiness set point is that genetic disposition. Do you see the cup as half full, or do you see it as half empty?
Mm.
Is everything in life good and for you, or is it kind of a poo-poo show and, not that much great is happening in the world? Or are you somewhere in between? So that's 50% of the set point. Only 10% is circumstance. So for everybody out there thinking, oh, if only my job would give me more money, or my boss would go away, or I have a better house, or COVID would disappear, then I'd be happy. Well, you're just lying to yourself, honestly, because it's not circumstances outside of you that changes or impacts your happiness in a lasting way. It's
Mhm.
the circumstances within you that impact your happiness to a greater level. And that's your habits of thoughts and behavior. So 40% of that set point is made up of your habits of thoughts and behavior, which you have total control over.
Right, right. And it's interesting because what you're saying is that happiness is inside the individual, but a lot of people literally addictively link their happiness to something external. And
Yes.
I've known a lot of people who are very afraid of being single
Mhm.
because of the fact that they define themselves as happy when they're in a relationship.
Right.
And so I know a lot of people who have, they go from bad experience to bad experience to bad experience because of the fact that they have to be in a relationship to be
Mhm.
happy. And they're not defining happiness in the same way I do. My idea is contentment by myself. And if they really wanted to have a happy relationship, they have to be themselves to be loved for who
Mhm.
they are. And so it
Yeah.
really comes down to that space of where are you, what are you defining as happy? And earlier on, you said something about it depends on how uncomfortable they are. And I think a lot of people are very comfortable in their anxieties and their fears, and they get
Yeah.
into their velvet cage,
Because
and
that's
they're
what
like,
they know.
"Yeah, I'm comfortable in here, and I understand the threats, and I can deal with these threats."
Right. It's
Right?
just like having a bad job, right? Well, at least it's the one I know. I know the crap I'm dealing with.
Right,
And
right.
you know,
When I look at the choices some people make, I know people who are so afraid to go outside because they're afraid they're going to get hurt. Well,
Mhm.
that is not living a happy experience. Or being in a crowd because they're afraid they're going to be judged for who they are. That's not a happy experience. And I'm
Mhm.
like, that happiness is not only a choice, but it's a feeling. And you know, um, in Buddhism, they always talk about you know getting to the bliss state or nirvana,
Mhm.
and getting to that position of pure joy and happiness. And when I look at a lot of people in life, they're not living their bliss state in any way, shape, or form.
No,
They're
they fear their bliss state. I think a
right.
lot of people fear the bliss state because I feel like in our culture, I don't know, I can't speak to other cultures except for a couple that I've actually lived in, but in this culture, there is some kind of ego boost around being miserable. That we kind of get off on being miserable and exhausted and overworked and overwhelmed. And it's like serving us in some way. And so that's the norm, which is a sad, sad norm. And to break out of that cast you off as some kind of weirdo, right?
Right,
like
right.
like me being a joyful person and happy and always looking at the positive, or primarily looking at the positive, it's like it's unusual, it's not normal, right? So along the way to doing that, you also have to make a commitment to get really comfortable with who you are, because it can be a solo path, not necessarily lonely, because you'll find your people, but it can start off as a very solo path because it's not the norm.
Right, right. It's one of the, it's like, you know, I often talk about the fact that I've got 3 ex-wives. Right. I talk about that quite a lot because I find the joke of, calling me triple X very funny. um, um,
We could delve deeper into that another day.
but what I find funny about it is that, and not really funny, when I look at those relationships, I was defining myself by those relationships. And I truly had that expression of, I like myself better in relationships. And
Mm,
I think it has to do with validation at that point, which is
mhm,
why I actively chose after my second wife to just not date anyone for a long time. And then after my third wife, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to live me. And when someone comes along who likes me for me, great. And if not, I still like me for me. Right.
Yes.
And that's the key is being you fully. And so I think a lot of people are afraid to be alone with themselves because of what they might think or do or say. It's funny. As the corporate action hero, I put out daily videos. And when I go back and I look at my daily videos, the top 3 videos that come up every day that show me that this has been watched more than anything else have the word conscience in the title.
Interesting.
Yeah, people they think they've done bad things, and so they're judging themselves on their bad things, and so they're walking through life filled with guilt and anxiety, and so they're not happy, so they're searching the internet for some way to clear their conscience, because that's what those videos were about, clearing the conscience, right? And I have one from 2013 that's still one of my number 1 videos.
Wow.
And
What's
it's all
the
about
actual title of it?
Yeah, it's how I think it's how to clear your conscience.
How to clear your oh man, people are guilty, hey?
Yeah, and how unhappy can you be if you're judging yourself that way?
Right. Which I mean is why we basically started this podcast, right? Because there's so much judgment in religion, and you're always supposed to be asking for forgiveness, because the expectation is that you are a sinner and you are wrong and you are bad. And so of course we need help clearing our consciousness, because we've been raised to believe that we're guilty of something, and it's just, it really requires some fortitude to choose to step out of that programming.
Right. I often say, when my son was born, and I was in that emergency room in the hospital room, and my son was born, my first thought was, what a wretched sinner. That's not what my first thought about my son was. My first thought, oh my God, my son, I was overjoyed. It was like, oh, I love my son so much. It's like that power of that joyful moment. I love this child, right? And as he grew up, I never got to the point where I felt that he was a wretched sinner. I never got to that point, right? And was going to burn in hell until he was baptized. And he was baptized, right?
Okay.
He did get baptized, but for me, when the whole concept of being born into sin is terrible, but as you said earlier about people defining themselves by their suffering and by their struggles in life, I mean, I think when you look at spirituality and happiness combined, I think they're antithetical, because of the fact that, like the Jewish faith, you ask a Jewish person, we're made to suffer, right?
Yeah.
That we're made to suffer, right?
I know about guilt.
Right. Catholics, I know about guilt. You're a wretched sinner. I mean, Amazing Grace, that saved a wretch like me. Now, granted, the Catholic Church did change the words lately, and it's now saved and set me free.
Oh,
yeah, they
aggressive.
got rid of wretched. That's been it's been easily 20 years ago that they changed it.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's how long it's been since I've been to church.
but when I look at it, it's like, religion is antithetical because of the fact that it very much fosters that self-worth, self-doubt, and self-worth issues.
Yeah.
And I think that spirituality, I always talk about my mom telling me spirituality being a personal journey. It's up to you to figure out what you believe. And when I did my studies, I was like, God is love. And if God is love, then he's not judging me, and he's not thinking I'm a wretch, because when I watched my kid be born, it was pure essence of love. And so it was God right there.
Yes.
And the book that I'm writing, the Recovering Catholic's Guide to Spirituality, I tell a story in there about how I puked on the altar. And it's a funny story, but when I puked on the altar, the priest judged me. My brother, who was the reader, judged me. But there was a woman in the congregation who literally got up and walked up to the altar and whispered to my brother, that little boy doesn't look well. And I say, that was God. That was when God showed up. That person who cared and did something empathetic. Yes. That was God showing up. That was, so she was bringing the happiness of God, the joy of God. So some people find their happiness in their religion or their spirituality, but is that yet another addiction to be grasping onto for happiness? Or is spirituality larger than religion, and happiness is found in awakening our own personal spirituality?
Well, I would definitely say it's a personal experience. And again, to point to the research, it does show that people who feel a greater connection to something outside of themselves, whether they call it God or Buddha or whatever else, those people are happier.
Mm-hmm.
And if I interpret that through my own lens, I would say it's because this is how we can create more meaning, like, oh, I'm being guided, or oh, this happened for a reason, or oh,
Yep.
you
Oh, it's
know,
not my fault.
this is leading me in a different direction. And so, that, and to be able to lean on, especially for people who feel alone, if there's a spiritual practice there, and there's a belief, a deep belief that, you know they're part of a protective universe, and there's a force greater than them that is going to at least hold them at the end, then they know they're not alone, and there's something more, and they can connect into that and ask for help. So that leads to greater happiness, because connection leads to greater happiness,
Right.
connecting
Yeah.
to others, connecting to nature, connecting to ourselves, connecting to God, or whatever you call it, the yada yada.
That's my favorite thing of this podcast is the yada yada. I love that. My sister loves that too. So now, tying happiness and spirituality together, I'm going to throw a little loop in here.
Sure.
When you rate the happiest countries in the world, they're the Scandinavian countries, are always the winners. They have the highest number of atheists of any country in the world. Atheists, not
Yeah.
so they don't believe in spirituality,
Okay.
right? And but how they define when you ask them why are you so happy, they say things like, well, we have free education, they define it by the socialist things that they're getting, and they say we have free education, we have free healthcare, we don't have to worry about things. So the lack of worry is where happiness comes from for them, right?
Yes.
And it's not about spirituality. So when it comes to a lot of people will find great happiness in their spiritual or religious practices because of the fact that they can hand the steering wheel over to the religion or the spiritual practice. Do you find that those people that who do lean into their spiritual beliefs, or specifically their religious beliefs, do you find that they may be happy, but they still are very judgmental?
Oh, well, sure. Lots of people who lean into religion are very judgmental, as we know. I'd say too, though, that those people in Scandinavia who are the happiest, even if they're atheists, that doesn't mean they don't practice meditation or mindfulness,
Right.
So
Right.
they might not feel like there's this, connection, but they may still practice the same things that those of us who do believe there's something greater than ourselves practice. It's showing up differently, but it's having a similar effect.
Right. I was a guest on a podcast this morning at a ridiculous early hour, and I was like, and 2 days ago he actually moved it earlier, which may be pretty nasty. But we got into the concept of he felt that spirituality and corporate America could not come together. And I've seen a huge shift because one of the things that I'm finding when I deal with corporations is they've switched to values-based initiatives, and they've started focusing on the idea of, doing for their team, creating a happier team, right? Because they find that the happier they are, the more productive they are, and the longer they retain their employees and all these things. And so when I see the fact that I see a big shift in that direction, he couldn't see it because he doesn't have the experience I have of speaking to lots of companies all over the world. So do you see in general the shift in society towards a happier society, or do you see it falling the other direction?
I think actually because of COVID, there's a shift toward greater happiness,
Mm,
because I think it helped a lot of people see their priorities more clearly.
right.
And that time of rest that was basically forced on a lot of countries helped people to see that that chaotic, busy, 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 go, go, go lifestyle wasn't serving them. And from my own personal point of view, with the friends that I have, or the greater network that I have, I've just seen them really appreciate slowing down, to really
Mm,
appreciate having more time with their family. Like, people who never worked at home before love working at home. They're so thrilled to be able to stop in the middle of the day and walk their dog. So I think that there has been a shift because of this pandemic. And my hope is that that will continue, that we won't just forget and go
mm.
back to the old way of being. But I think that enough of us are on this path toward, you know, never quite balance, because I don't really believe balance is a thing except for in yoga. But it's actually being able to fall out and step back in, and fall out and step back in, and always step back in. That is the real balance we're seeking for, just the ability to recognize when we're falling off of the path, and to be able to gently and lovingly and compassionately bring ourselves back,
Mm,
on the
right.
path. And so I think there are so many more of us doing that now since COVID hit.
I completely agree, and like in the speaking industry, I'm convinced that it'll never go back to the way it was 100% before. I
Mhm,
mean, it won't be all live events. I think virtual events have really shown their value,
mhm.
and I think the more virtual events you can do, the more work you'll get. And for me, I'm much happier when I don't have to travel 200 days a year
Right.
than when
Yeah.
I'm get to sit here in my underwear and do speeches with a tie on. Right. Hello. Right.
And in corporate environments themselves, there is a greater emphasis on caring about the people. Now, that is
Right.
not to say that all corporations will make that shift. Some
Right.
will
Right.
stay the
Well,
same.
well, I'll tell you something else. It seems like the society in general has gotten much more relaxed. When
Mhm,
I first started doing corporate speeches, and I mean it's been a decade since I've been doing that, right? Full
mhm,
time.
mhm.
I would go into corporations and everybody had their tie all the way up,
Yeah.
right? You almost can't find ties anymore,
Wow.
right? They all have the jacket's still on, the shirt's still on, but it's unbuttoned and
Yeah.
they're relaxed because it's more approachable, it's more
Mhm.
friendly, it's happier, right?
Yeah.
And I have actually stopped using ties in my. I don't wear ties in my speeches anymore.
Oh, do you still wear your vest though?
I always wear the vest. Always wear the vest. Yeah, I like the vest.
Yeah.
Right.
Sharp. Sharp.
And I really have been lately been looking at the way I. It's interesting you say ask that question because I have literally been thinking. One of the things I don't like about me in collared shirts is I have a short neck.
Mm.
Right. So a collared shirt makes me look like I'm on a plate. Right. Right. So, but if I have a t-shirt on,
Mhm.
I have a much nicer neck, right? And I think it looks better in pictures, and I don't look like Dom DeLuise as much. and so I have literally been debating wearing a different style of shirt, like a banded collar shirt
Mhm.
or a even like a mock tee, and underneath the vest and doing it that way. I think it would still look great. It would look great in pictures, and it'd be really great for nunchucks and whips.
Right.
Really great for nunchucks and whips because everything would be closer and nothing grabbing on, whatever. Um, so I think the society in general is moving towards more happy. I think people are getting more relaxed into
Mhm,
that happy space. And
mhm.
I see it that way. But when I talk to people, a lot of people think the world's getting worse and getting harder and more, difficult to live in. And I often wonder whether I'm in the majority or the minority in growing towards that direction.
Mm. I
Because
think we're probably still in the minority, honestly. And there are still more and more and more people who are accepting that it's a good place to be.
Right.
I think it's everything is our own perception. So if I decide that the world is scary and getting worse and worse and worse, then you're right, then I'm right. And if I decide that more people are opening up to happiness and their heart's desire and compassion and kindness and self-love, then that's what I see and that's what I experience. And so
Right.
whatever is true for me, whatever I decide is my reality, because
Right.
it's an inside out job. The world doesn't exist outside of our minds.
Exactly. I completely agree with that assessment. Because I think that, as Buddha says, what we think we become, we create our world.
Mhm.
And I think that when I see these people who are, collecting guns for the apocalypse or the zombie revolution, I'm like, there's a problem there, because you're
Right.
focused on the wrong things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're focused on all the scary and frightful and negative, and it's just that again, that's not what life is meant to be.
Right.
And I agree on, like, on a spiritual level, that there have to be those players, right? There has to be contrast. There have to be those players who are showing us what we don't want to be, so
Right.
that we can be what we do want to be.
I
And
just, in my head, you said players, and I instantly thought of a first person shooter game.
yeah.
It
Yeah,
has to
I
be
thought I
the
was thinking chessboard, but yeah, so I believe that we're all put here to be something for each other and to play a certain role. Like I always say, my ex-husband, like he chose to be here to, be who he is, so that I could learn my lessons, and and
Mhm.
that way, by making that the meaning, I can be grateful for him, and I can even feel love for all the crap that he put me through.
Right.
because on a spiritual level, like, we agreed, our soul group agreed, like, we do these things for each other, right? Like,
And, do you find to achieve your happiness, you have to um hold fast and strong to what you want in your life?
yes, and I also believe that it's important to be flexible and be willing to let it go
Right.
and change your mind and
Right.
choose something
Right.
different. Like, we're always evolving, and when we stop, well, that's the end. So
Right.
whether of our physical life or our emotional growth. And
Right.
so I always want to be evolving and opening and releasing and allowing me to be more of who I am.
I think being who you are is the key to happiness.
Mhm. Oh, for sure.
And I think that, having a support group around you who allows you to be who you are is huge. And
Mhm.
and even in relationships, one of the reasons why I'm not in one now is because of the fact that I'm not going to settle for someone who's not going to allow me to be who I am, and I'm not going to do anything to let them not be who they are, right?
Right.
Because I think it has to go both ways. Of course, it can't
Well,
be
it does, and it's
dominant.
still up to us. Like, that's a whole other podcast topic, right? But we allow ourselves to put away aspects of ourselves in relationship. It's not someone else forcing us to do it,
That's right.
right? We're allowing. I had this conversation at my meetup this weekend where someone had just ended a very long, like 26-year relationship, and she had noticed that there were just major parts of her that she had just kind of tucked away, and I totally identified with that, right? But we make that choice, and
Hmm.
part of our happiness is also taking full responsibility for what's happening in our lives, because that's the only way we can change it, right? So
Right.
if
Right.
I blame you, John, for making my life miserable, but then I give you the power to make it better,
Right.
where
Right.
am I in that?
Right.
So
Right.
in relationship, it's becoming aware of where you're choosing to put yourself away, not that they're
Right.
not allowing you to be who you are. You're making that choice for you.
Right. Right. And it's exactly right. But like I was just saying, for me, my choice is not to bring in people who aren't
Mhm.
in alignment with me being me.
Right.
Right. And that's, to me, to me, that's hugely important,
Yeah.
and um my second wife was the one that I most connected with. Right. And it's interesting. I always say my second wife was a rebound from my first wife was a rebound from my second wife. Because okay, my first wife was a rebound from my second.
I know the story, but that could be confusing for listeners.
I was engaged. I was engaged and had a wonderful relationship. We broke up. I got married. That ended very quickly. And then I got back with my fiance from before, who I had broken up with. So my first wife was a rebound from my second wife. And then but the thing about my second wife is I've never laughed harder in my life. I've never enjoyed being me. And I felt totally comfortable being me. And when that relationship broke down, I was still being me, but her expectations had changed, and she had taken away a bunch of the things that made me happy in life. When I say made me, things that I did that I was happy doing, put it that better way to say it, probably. And because she was trying to mold me into something different. And so it ended up becoming a very nasty experience. Right. And then when I got into my last marriage, I really think I got into that because of the fact that I had decided I wanted a relationship, and I wouldn't be happy until I had one. Right. Yeah. So boom, there you go. So now I look at my life. I'm like, my happiness is more important. I'm very happy being me. I like me. I'm okay. You know, I've got this.
And I think that's so key. Like that's so key. People, really have to learn how to like themselves and how to spend time with themselves. And, we're so trying to fill our brains with chatter so we don't think about like the hurts that we're experiencing,
that past experience.
Yeah. Or even the present one. We don't want to face it. We don't want to acknowledge it. And so we keep our minds so busy with things to do and people, and that we don't have time to quiet down. But it's in that quieting down and spending time with yourself that you could actually see the parts of you that you really like and admire. I know for sure for me that I love being alone. Like I have got to have my quiet time for me. And I learned, even when I was still married, I learned, how to be more comfortable spending time with myself, because I was in Singapore and he was traveling a lot and I didn't know very many people. And so I would take myself to the movies and I would take myself to lunch and starting to really enjoy that, time with myself was key to my eventual liking who I am again.
Right. No, you and I, one of the things that's always amazes me is you and I have so much in common. It's ridiculous. and I mean, ridiculous. When I was on the road doing Renaissance festivals, I was surrounded by party people, party people, like real serious, heavy duty party people. And I was the quiet guy in the trailer, spending my time alone, going out to the movies on my own, taking myself out to lunch on my own, because I like myself and I like being alone. I'm one of those kind of people. But when I'm in a relationship, I love that too. But I have to have my time to myself, and I have to be comfortable with, happy enough within myself to give myself that. And that's one of the reasons why, like right now, I'm saying I'm not looking for anything, because if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. It's going to be what's going to happen, but I have to like me for anybody else to like me. And I have, have to be 100% me. And it's interesting because happiness to me does come from inside. And I go to a movie theater with people, I get real annoyed if they talk. I get real annoyed because I'm like, I'm here to see a damn movie and I just paid money and I want to see the movie. Right. Why are you talking? Shut up. But I'm used to going to movies alone. I like going and really delving into the film, right?
Yeah. And if you're doing movies, right, you're not talking during it anyway.
Right.
So what's taking a friend, meet someone after or whatever.
Right. Well, what gets me about the people who talk to, I like, it's the thing that I've had to train my son not to do. Like, because we go to the Marvel movies or the superhero movies or whatever, and he sits there and he's like, "Did you see that?" Blah blah blah. And I miss the next scene because he's talking.
Right. This is why I mostly watch movies at home with my kids, because I can pause it they'll start to be like, oh, I don't understand what just happened, or what did I miss, or have their thoughts about it. And so we'll just pause and we'll have mid-movie discussions.
Right. That's fine if you're not missing the rest of the movie, right?
Right.
But
Which is why a pause button is good.
right. And I much prefer watching it straight through without the pauses, because the story is designed to have pace. And so I like.
Well, yes. When I'm alone, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Or with an adult, but kids want to ask a lot of questions during movies.
Right. So I know you have a busy day today, and it's 10 minutes of
oh yes, I have to run pretty soon. So
it's just been a very enlightening conversation, and just to say this to you, Tamara, we all look for things in our life that make us happy, and doing this podcast with you, it definitely makes me happy, makes me smile every time I'm with you. So, and I really enjoy that time with you. So thank you for being part of that happy experience. And
likewise, John Davis.
Thanks. Well, you want to take us out of here?
I would love to. And I just want to remind all of our listeners that if you are seeking to connect with your own greater happiness, then reach out, because I am great at helping people find their way back to their own path. You're always on it, and sometimes you need help seeing it.
And let me just add to that. Make sure you check out Tamara's Facebook page, because she's always hosting meetups and putting up great content, and really pithy, thought-provoking things happen on her page. And I think it's really important that you avail yourself of these opportunities to self-explore, so that you can find your own happiness.
Yeah. And you have to surround yourself with what you want more of. So that's a great thing to do. And you can find me on Spirit Cafe, of course, where we love to hear your comments and ideas for new conversations. So thank you, John Davis, for being the fabulous co-host you are.
Oh, well, thank you. It's always a pleasure, as I said.
All right. And thank you, listeners, for being here with us yet again. So leave us a review. 5 stars make us happy. And we'll talk to you again next time.
Thank you for joining us at Spirit Cafe, a place where you can safely explore your spirituality without the guilt or dogma of religion. Leave all comments and suggestions on the Spirit Cafe podcast Facebook page.